Hi everyone, Susanne here. I hope you're all well and welcome to Sew Custom. Today's video is going to be my top 5 sewing resources to improve sewing skills. So if you're interested in seeing that, then let's get started. So the 5 resources I have to recommend today are all resources that I have used over this past maybe 2.5-3 years whilst I was trying to learn how to sew. So they're all tried and tested. I love every one of these and would highly recommend every one. So my first recommendation is a channel called Professor Pincushion. It's a channel that has been up and running I think for quite a while now, but I started visiting this site in 2015, sort of the latter stages of 2015 when I started sewing, right the entire way through 2016. So their channel is all about sewing. But the main reason why I visited their channel was to learn techniques, so basic techniques for dressmaking. And they have an abundance, an absolute abundance of little bite-sized tutorials on anything that you can think of. I learned how to sew a button placket, how to put in zips, types of pockets like patch pocket and how to sew it. They just have absolutely everything you can think of. I see Professor Pincushion as a bit of a library that I can dip in and out of every now and again when I need a little bit of help on something that I'm stuck on. So really, really brilliant if you're like I was and you're like super green to this whole sewing thing, but you're really desperate to get started. I just love this channel and would 100% recommend it. I am so grateful for their tutorials. So that is my number 1, Professor Pincushion. So 2016 for me really was trying to hone the skills that I had previously learned. So I was repeating each of those skills on different types of fabrics. I was buying different patterns and trying to force myself to go out of my comfort zone, so not to stick to what I'd learnt and keep making that same garment over and over again. So I was just desperate to learn as much as I could. So I started to become a little bit more confident in 2016. Not hugely, but just a little bit more confident. And I wanted to move on a little bit more. So I made a coat, or tried to make a coat. That would be more accurate. And I just came up against so many techniques that I had no clue about. Towards the end of 2016, I then discovered my recommendation number 2, which is Angela Kane's Sewing TV. So when I embarked on my coat project, and I realised I couldn't do it, I started looking at resources that I could glean some information from that would help me out in completing my project. So I did my usual, I did a type into YouTube, and Angela Kane was one of the first ones that came up, and I am so glad I found her, so glad. So Angela's channel, Angela herself is a professional. She makes and sells PDF patterns. I haven't bought one myself, but the useful thing that I found from her channel is that she does sew-alongs for those patterns that she makes. So she'll do little sort of bite-sized sew-alongs, so maybe 10-minute, 20-minute long for a particular part of the coat. So maybe she'll do an entire video on, the cutting out, or an entire video on putting the collar on, putting the sleeve on, things like that. So she breaks her videos up into series, and there might be 20 videos in a series, but I watched all of them just because I felt that when I was watching her, she's a professional, so I need to listen to what she's telling me. She knows what she's talking about, so I was soaking it all up like a sponge, and it really, really helped me out. So I did get my coat done. It wasn't perfect. And it's not my best work in the world, but I did learn so much from Angela's channel. So I would 100% recommend for those of you that have sort of honed your skills, your beginner skills, and you're sort of itching to move on just a little bit further. So Angela Kane's Sewing TV is my recommendation number 2. So 2017 then, I felt in 2017 as if I had learnt a good bit, and I kept wanting to move on. I kept wanting to sort of challenge myself and try and get better at this sewing business. So sort of the first half of 2017 for me was spent trying to hone those new skills that I'd learned. So making more coats, making more dresses, honing all of those techniques that I had learnt. And I then wanted to try and move on a little bit further and really, really wanted to draft my own block. So from sort of halfway through 2017, right up until sort of December really of 2017, I kept watching everything I could watch about making blocks, how to make blocks, what blocks there are, and what you use the block for, all of that type of stuff. Pattern making, I just watched loads and loads of different YouTube channels, and I gleaned some understanding from a lot of different channels, but one channel I came across in my quest was my third recommendation and my final YouTube channel, which is, some of you will not be surprised by this, but it is Diane DEZIEL. I absolutely love this channel. So this channel right now is my favorite YouTube channel. I do not tire of Diane and do not tire of her tutorials. I think she is such a generous woman to like continually just be pumping out these videos that are packed full of information. So I have made quite a few blocks now following tutorials on Diane's channel. So I made the bodice block that I worked from when I made the green dress. So that bodice block I used her pivoting method as well, that she has tutorials on, in order to manipulate the darts on that pattern. So I've used her methods and I really like them. I find them easy to understand. I just love it. I don't know what else to say, but I love this channel, and if you are like me and you're itching to sort of move a little bit more forward, you know, you've made a few commercial patterns, you feel as if you have your skills sort of honed and you want to maybe start hacking patterns, or you want to start designing your own patterns, I would 1,000,000% recommend Diane DEZIEL, my recommendation number 3. So then the latter stages of 2017 and into 2018 and right up to today, I have been using my 4th recommendation, and that is this book, which is Pattern Cutting Made Easy, and it's by Gillian Holman. I bought this book quite a while ago. I bought this book and the next one I'm going to show you maybe in 2017, sort of early on in 2017. And I just couldn't understand anything that was in it. I'll be totally honest. I just didn't understand it at all. But when I started watching Diane's tutorials, this book then became really relevant. So Diane, as I say, has tutorials on blocks and specific patterns that she has drafted from those blocks. But this book is a little introduction into more patterns. So it has nearly every sleeve you can think of and how to make the pattern for it. It has collars, nearly every one you can think of, and how to make the pattern for it. Different necklines and facings. So the little trick that I used on the green dress project about pinching in the neck, that came from this book. I used this book to put the kimono sleeves on the green dress pattern. The book itself I love because it is really straightforward. It's an introduction, so it doesn't go into hardly any detail actually at all. Every task is split up into steps, and there's usually about maybe 4 or 5 steps in each task. So you can follow these 4 or 5 steps and you literally have a pattern. So it takes you to supplement this book with other resources, I think, but I have really enjoyed this book. So that is my recommendation number 4, Pattern Cutting Made Easy by Gillian Holman. And my fifth and final recommendation is actually two books, but I'm including them as one pick because one just follows from the other. So Dress Pattern Designing and More Dress Pattern Designing, both by Natalie Bray. And these books I bought, as I say, at the same time as I bought this little number, but I just never used them because these books to me were just super complex, way too detailed for me, and I just got lost. Even reading like the introduction in this book, like I was getting lost in the introduction, never mind actually the getting into it. But very recently actually I have just made a pink coat. I've done a few videos on it, I'll link them below, but I drafted my coat block from this one actually. So I will admit I haven't used these books extensively, but what I have used them for has been fantastic. So I used them for the coat block, as I mentioned. I am also using this book at present in order to draft a yoke on a dress that is turning out to be a little bit more complex than I thought it was going to be. But I have followed the steps in this book and I've actually drafted the pattern. I'm really pleased with how the steps were explained, that I could actually understand them. So as I say, I was really intimidated by these books at the start, but now that I'm getting over that intimidated feeling or that feeling of intimidation, I'm really enjoying these books, and there is loads that I think I can learn from them. So that is my recommendation number 5, the Dress Pattern Designing and More Dress Pattern Designing, both by Natalie Bray. Love them. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, please do, and I shall see you guys on Friday with my April Mix video. So until then, I hope you have a fantastic week. Bye folks!